Welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're diving straight into one of the absolute most popular budget audio options out there right now, the JBL Vibe Beam True Wireless Earbuds. Look, if you've been hunting for affordable earbuds, you've probably scrolled right past these. But hey, we're not just going to sit here and read you a boring spec sheet. No way. We're going to cut straight through all that marketing noise by looking at thousands of real customer data points to see what it's actually like to live with these things day in and day out.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the marketing promise. Second, the audiophile reality check. Third, surviving real-world elements. Fourth, the great fit debate. And finally, number 5, the final verdict.
But before we get totally into the weeds, just think about this number for a second. 38,170. That is the massive number of global ratings these earbuds have racked up on Amazon alone. I mean, this isn't some tiny niche product. We're looking at a huge mountain of real-world experiences here. And honestly, it's the perfect anchor for our analysis today because, well, numbers that big, they just don't lie.
Now, when you break down those ratings, things get pretty interesting. On the surface, it looks great, right? You've got 69% of users handing out a perfect 5 stars, giving it an overall 4.3-star average. But there's a noticeable 8% of users who gave these a 1-star rating. And you know, in the world of massive consumer data, an 8% failure rate really hints at a polarizing experience. There is definitely a catch here, and we need to unpack exactly what that is.
Section 1, the marketing promise, setting the baseline. To figure out what's working and what's not, we really need to know what JBL actually promises these things can do straight out of the box.
The official specs paint a picture of basically the ultimate everyday workhorse. JBL is touting 8mm drivers, pushing their signature deep bass sound. They're promising up to 32 hours of total battery, so that's 8 hours in the buds themselves, plus another 24 in the case. Add in a super handy 10-minute speed charge that gets you 2 hours of playback, an ergonomic stick-closed design, and an IP54 rating for water and dust resistance. Sounds pretty solid, right?
But here is the real kicker. All of those features are packed into a shockingly low price point of literally just under $50, specifically $47.19. On paper, it almost seems too good to be true. But how does all that paper spec goodness actually translate to your eardrums? Which brings us to Section 2, the audiophile reality check, hacking the sound. Let's pivot away from those dry specs and get into actual listener experiences. Because let's be real, when you buy cheap earbuds, sound quality is usually the very first thing to go. So, we came across this incredibly detailed review from a verified buyer named P. Dobrinin, who actually happens to be a professional audio engineer. Now, out of the box, he noticed exactly what most budget buyers complain about: really harsh high frequencies and almost zero bass. But instead of just returning them, he put his professional skills to work. He basically gave us a masterclass on how budget audiophiles can squeeze high-end sound out of cheap hardware. Let's walk through his exact step-by-step hack to massively upgrade the sound profile. First off, it's a physical thing. You absolutely have to make sure you get a snug fit with the right silicone tips, or that bass just will not resonate, period. Step 2, don't just blindly pair them via Bluetooth. You need to actually download the dedicated JBL headphone app. Then, Step 3 is where the real magic happens. Using the app's 10-band equalizer, Dobrinin says you need to carve out the upper mid-range slightly and then add a tiny bump, we're talking just 1 to 2 decibels, to the bottom end of the lower frequencies. By doing that, he balanced the frequency response to match his high-end reference speakers. Pretty amazing, right?
Oh, and he also pointed out a really nuanced little trade-off in the app settings that you definitely want to know about. The app has this video mode, which is meant to fix that annoying lip sync lag when you're watching movies on your phone. But he noted that flipping this on actually degrades the audio quality a bit compared to the standard audio mode. It's a small detail, but absolutely crucial if you're chasing the best possible fidelity when you're just jamming out to music.
All right, Section 3, surviving real-world elements, beyond the lab tests. So we know they can sound great, but earbuds at this price, they get tossed into bags, dropped on the pavement, and just put through the ringer.
Officially, JBL claims an IP54 certification for the earbuds themselves, with the charging case sitting at IPX2. If we translate that tech jargon, the 5 basically means they're mostly protected against dust, and the 4 means they can handle splashing water from any direction. Think light rain or, a really sweaty gym session.
But how does that hold up in the real world? Well, reviewer Alex Aldana shared this completely wild yet totally relatable story. Basically, his earbuds survived a full cycle in the washing machine, case and all, and came out sounding brand new and charging like nothing even happened. Now, obviously, do not try that at home, but wow, it's a pretty powerful testament to their build quality against the elements.
But, and there's always a but, while they might survive a spin cycle, our data shows the internal hardware isn't completely invincible. When we looked at customer sentiment around battery life, it's really split. On one hand, you have 827 positive mentions praising the all-day charge. But then you've got 558 negative mentions, and a huge recurring theme in those complaints, the charging pins. People are reporting that over time, the buds just fail to charge in the case, or one bud randomly dies entirely. So long-term reliability might be a bit of a gamble.
Moving right along to Section 4, the great fit debate. Comfort versus gravity. Let's dive into how the physical design sparks the absolute most heavily debated topic in all of our data.
When you hold up that slick marketing copy right next to the aggregate data, a really glaring issue pops up. JBL promises a fit so comfortable you might forget you're wearing them. The reality? A whopping 1,188 negative customer mentions specifically calling out the fit. Yep, this right here is exactly where that 8% of one-star reviews we saw earlier is coming from.
Let's break down exactly what people are saying, echoing users like T. Burke. First off, they just literally fall out for a ton of people, even during basic stuff like eating or just breathing heavily. Seriously. Second, the plastic they used for the buds and the case is incredibly smooth and slippery. Which leads to point 3, they are incredibly frustrating to grip and pull out of their magnetic charging case. And finally, just a super annoying design choice, the tiny left and right microlabels are the exact same color as the plastic. Trying to read those in low light? Good luck with that.
But hey, the explainer community always finds a workaround, right? Reviewer A Deep Reader dropped this super practical gym hack to solve the whole gravity issue. Since that slippery plastic shell is the main culprit, he says to just ditch the stock silicone earbud tips entirely. If you swap them out for a cheap set of aftermarket foam tips, the foam actually expands in your ear canal. It firmly locks them in place for heavy workouts, and as a nice little bonus, it even subtly improves the bass response. A real game changer.
Finally, we're at Section 5, the final verdict. How do they stack up? So we have a budget earbud that can sound incredible with some app tweaking and can literally survive a washing machine, but is notoriously slippery. How does it fare against the wider market?
We pulled some data from a fantastic head-to-head review by a user named Nick, who pitted the Vibe Beams against similar options like the Soundcore Liberty 4NC. Now, at this price bracket, competitors often throw in larger drivers and active noise canceling, which the JBLs completely lack. But the JBLs fight back hard with that app, giving you unlimited manual EQ options while the competitors just sort of lock you into their preset samples. And crucially, if you care about audio purity, Nick pointed out that the JBLs offer a perfectly clean, silent background between songs that totally avoids that slight, annoying white noise hum you often get with budget noise-canceling earbuds.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from all this data. Look, the JBL Vibe Beams are definitely not flawless. Their slippery design and that highly debated fit mean you're gonna need some patience and probably those aftermarket foam tips. But if you're willing to dive into the app and sculpt the sound yourself, they are an absolute hidden gem. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. Are you willing to sacrifice that perfect, effortless fit out of the box in exchange for a $50 audiophile secret? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and we will see you in the next one.